Circles. Running in circles and cycles. The stories rinse and repeat on never-ending steam. The novelty feels fresh, but it's just a new shade of the same shape. The edge, if there, is hidden. When found, it's too sharp. Better go around the circle one more time. Welcome to the Memento Mori Lab podcast. I'm Myra, your host and aspiring creative friend. Are we all hamsters spinning in our wheels, sad to be there for our entertainment when it's just another reminder that we do anything to avoid boredom? Even when we don't feel like it, we end up spinning in those damn wheels and we don't know how to get out of them or why we got in the first place. As I get older and watch life unfold, it seems to me that things happen in cycles rather than in a linear forward motion, sometimes backward motion. It's like we keep running marathons in a circle, sometimes for years in the exact same circle. We see a straight path at some points of the race, and it feels like moving forward, right? But then, somehow, we end up right where we started. Maybe we are not the same person that started the marathon, but we are in the same spot. Like the TV series we all watch and learn to love, the characters are usually running in circles, without ever encountering actual progress or really moving forward in their lives. The shows go on for 15 seasons, and even with all the events happening in each episode, their lives remain pretty much the same. A few changes, sure, but nothing drastic. Somehow, they manage to stay pretty much the same person. They keep making similar mistakes and remain stuck in these cycles. And as viewers, we feel comfortable with that, don't we? We know what to expect each time we watch it. I think that happens in our lives too. Perhaps sometimes the circles we're in are so expanded that we don't even realize we're in one. Does that make sense? It feels like we are progressing. When people run laps, they see a straight path ahead, more so than the circle or an oval shape. Other times, in more obvious ways, we all heard of or experienced vicious cycles, right? One negative event happens after another and another and another. They all reinforce each other through a feedback loop. So things keep getting worse and we can't seem to break out of it. There's also the other side of the coin, which are the virtuous cycles or circles, which are positive events happening one after another in a loop. I guess these terms are more common in economics, as one of the known examples of a vicious cycle is poverty, and it's very hard for generations of a family to break out of it. But I think it lends itself to everything in life. We live in cycles, sometimes virtuous, other times vicious, and perhaps sometimes a bit of both. When thinking about vicious cycles, what comes to mind are addictions, unhealed traumas, and bad habits. They all have some internal or external reinforcement keeping us in the loop. Maybe healing and good habits work the opposite way and get us on virtuous cycles instead. What is fascinating to me is the closer I look, the more cycles and circles I see. I mean, it's terrifying, but it's interesting. Like eating habits, sleeping, working out, reading, writing, you name it. Everything has some sort of cycle in it. Even something so simple as a creative process. Stephen Pressfield, in his book War of Art, which every artist, or better yet, every human should read, talks about the resistance. I've mentioned the book a while back, but I never get tired of talking about it. As a side note, I feel like all the episodes in this podcast discuss similar subjects, one way or another. So if it sounds like I'm talking about the same things over and over, it's because I am. I try to approach these subjects that usually linger in my mind, or in my creative process or exploration or whatever. I try to approach them in different perspectives, different ways, different words, in the hopes of connecting with you somehow. Sometimes the way I talk about something or the poems I read don't reach you one day in the way I present them, but maybe next time the next episode might reach you, Anyway, Stephen Pressfield, resistance. Resistance is this thing, this energy, this non-entity force that tries to prevent us from doing the work. It's always there. If you love to paint, or you think you would love to paint, but you never do it, and you're not even sure why, well, that's resistance. If you want to write something, but it seems that life gets in the way, that's resistance. It takes all our fears and makes them grow bigger, taller, scarier. So much so that we end up frozen, not doing anything at all. We will talk more about that in the next episode. I was gonna call it Frozen, but it's like Disney ruined it for us. I'm kidding, I love Frozen. But anyway, it's probably gonna be called Freezing or something like that. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out. Within the creative process, resistance is always present. Sometimes I win, sometimes it wins. Here's how it usually goes for me. The cycle. I decide to take on a project. I'm hyped and I start working on it right away. I feel like a machine, or better yet, like Rocky climbing up the stairs. And for a few days, sometimes a couple of weeks, I am on a roll. Creating, writing, drawing, you name it. It feels fantastic. And every time I think, maybe this time, this energy will stay. But then I turn the curve in my creative little cycle and it all goes downhill. The energy is gone. All I want to do is nothing. I don't want to draw, I don't want to write, I don't want to do anything. Resistance just pins me down and there I stay. I waste a couple of hours on TikTok, then a couple more on video games. It's like everything came to a halt, but it didn't. I am in that fucking cycle. A few days, sometimes weeks go by, another turn, and suddenly I feel like cooking and doing all these different things until I turn again and find myself back in my writing and drawing sprint. This happens all the time. Isn't it wild? Each time I think that maybe this time I learned something and things would change, but they don't. Well, they haven't yet, and somehow I am still hopeful and hunting for a solution. And that's why I decided to make this episode. As we usually say here, I don't ever have real solutions or anything to offer, but at least, we're trying, right? This is just one of the many cycles present in my life. Overthinking is probably my worst, most vicious cycle. I'm sure you can find some cycles in your life too, right? Some of them might be the virtuous kind, which are positive. But how positive can they be if you end up right where you started? Shouldn't there be some sort of progress? I guess the movement of being in the circle takes our attention away from our progress. We get caught up running the marathon that we don't even remember signing up for. We don't stop to think if we even want that fucking medal. I don't run marathons, but I think they give out medals and stuff, right? They gotta give out something, I don't know. Anyway, you get the analogy. Like, people work on the same jobs for years and years without ever taking a second to think if they want to do it. Of course, capitalism, we all need jobs and we need money, but still, there are all these different kinds of jobs, It's not like you have to do one specific job. But maybe those people live better lives than most of us. Yeah, they probably do. But now that we are already questioning things, we can't really go back. Ignorance is bliss, they say. But once you take the blinders off, I guess you can't unsee the world. And what about fulfillment and true happiness, Perhaps it's time to take a moment and really think about the cycles we live in and take inventory. Are these marathons we want to run? Or are we exhausting ourselves for no reason at all? If we look back, our past is full of patterns. Those are great indicators of some of our cycles. But hey, I'm not saying this is easy or even that I know how to do it, because breaking patterns is tough. It's a huge challenge to break a cycle. And rest assured, another cycle will be created to replace that one. Anyone with an addiction, once they try to get rid of that addiction, they become addicted to something else in a way, They replace it with something else. I don't think it's possible to avoid cycles altogether. They seem to form naturally in life, just like nature in its own cycles. Life in itself is a cycle. Everything is cyclical. There's no point in trying to avoid it or break them all in one spur of the moment. Speaking about that, let's go to a poem about life and its cycles. Eternal cycles. Do we just live to die? Anything in between is just the passage of time. Would we really live if we didn't die? The cycle seems cruel. Death comes too soon, sometimes. But eternal sounds long. Life is loud, death silent. Eternal has one continuous sound. The cycles begin, the cycles end, some cycles break. Eternal remains a dot on a page, still, forever, untouched. Would you be a dot forever? Spinning around cycles doesn't sound much better. Here's a thought. What if instead of a cycle that always leads us to the same place we started, or an eternal dot, we go about things in an upward spiral? It's still cyclical. We could go around a circle, but we would end up a bit further than we were before. Not too far up ahead, just enough so it's not the same place. Like you learn one thing, you change one comma, and maybe you go up a little bit in that spiral. Because honestly, living life in a circle, a never-ending Groundhog Day life, scares me. But a spiral, well, that I can work with. I guess with this episode, I'm hoping we can take a closer look at our cycles and find ways to make them feel more like spirals moving forward or upward. Doesn't it sound a bit better than marathons in which we end up right where we started? With my creative process, I'm trying to find ways to make use of my downtime. Even if I am on TikTok doing nothing, I make sure I write down some ideas I have for the future when I feel a bit more active. And the last time I experienced this downfall, I made sure I still pushed myself to do one tiny creative thing, Often I feel like there are cycles within cycles, like endlessly scrolling through social media is a vicious cycle in itself. So if I catch it happening, I can break that cycle for 15 minutes. Yes, my famous 15 minutes for everything. I can stop scrolling and do something creative for 15 minutes. Even if I sit and stare at a blank page, I will do it. Or I will type whatever. A teacher once said, just keep typing, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. And for those minutes, we are forbidden to touch our phones. What usually happens is you get bored of writing, I don't know what to write, and you start writing something else. Then when the 15 minutes are up, I can decide whether I want to keep going or I really don't feel like it, and I can go back and drown myself in mindless social media scrolling. Another thing I've been doing is I'm trying to sort of time myself. So, okay, you want to waste some time on TikTok, that's fine. But you have, I don't know, like 20-30 minutes to do that. So I put on a timer or something and just scroll for 30 minutes until my phone beeps. And then I'm like, oh, okay, time's up. Close the app and move on. What are some of your cycles? And how are you planning on changing the vicious ones? Hit me up on Instagram at memento.mori.lab and let's chat. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it with some of your favorite people. They are probably living in their own secret vicious and virtuous cycles. I hope you have a fantastic day. As always, thanks for hanging around till the end. See ya!